Alright folks, today we're delving into the life of Mahatma Gandhi, the guy who turned the simple act of making salt into a revolutionary statement and made minimalism a political weapon long before it was a trendy lifestyle choice. So Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869 in Porbandar, a coastal town in present-day Gujarat, India. Picture a place with sandy beaches and not much Wi-Fi. His father was the Dewan Chief Minister of Porbandar, which is like being the city manager but with more elephants and fewer zoning laws. As a child, Gandhi was a bit of a paradox. Shy and bookish, yet occasionally mischievous. He once admitted to stealing coins from a servant and trying out smoking with friends. So not exactly the saintly figure you'd expect, but hey, who didn't make questionable choices before the age of 15? At 13, he married Kasturba Mukherjee, also 13, in an arranged marriage. Because when you're barely a teenager, what's more fun than navigating the complexities of wedlock? They went on to have 4 sons, which means they figured out at least one aspect of marriage pretty well. In 1888, at the age of 18, Gandhi set sail for England to study law at University College London. Before leaving, he made a vow to his mother to abstain from meat, alcohol, and women. So basically, he was signing up for the most disciplined college experience imaginable. While his peers were probably enjoying pub crawls, Gandhi was sipping water and pondering morality. In London, he tried to fit in by adopting British customs. He took dancing lessons, bought a silk hat, and even attempted playing the violin. Spoiler: none of these endeavors turned him into a social butterfly. It's like trying to infiltrate a secret club by wearing their merch, but forgetting the handshake. He returned to India in 1891 as a qualified barrister, only to find that his mother had passed away during his absence. A fact his family had kept from him to avoid distracting him from his studies. Talk about a rough homecoming. His attempts to establish a law practice in Bombay were less than successful. In court, his nerves got the best of him, and he couldn't bring himself to speak. A lawyer who's too shy to argue is like a chef who's allergic to food. Desperate for work, he accepted a year-long contract from an Indian firm in Natal, South Africa. In 1893, he arrived in Durban, where he quickly learned that being a British subject didn't grant him the respect he assumed it would. The racial discrimination was blatant and brutal. The pivotal moment came when he was thrown off a first-class train compartment in Pietermaritzburg, despite holding a valid ticket. The conductor and a white passenger insisted he move to third class because of his skin color. When he refused, they had him physically removed from the train. Spending a cold night in the station, Gandhi contemplated the injustice he faced, a moment that ignited his resolve to fight discrimination. He extended his stay in South Africa from the initial 1 year to 21 years. During this time, he established the Natal Indian Congress in 1894, aiming to unite the Indian community to fight for their rights. He also faced numerous instances of racism, including being beaten for walking near a house designated for whites. It's like life kept handing him lemons, and he decided to start a lemonade empire. Gandhi developed his philosophy of Satyagraha, meaning truth force or soul force. He organized nonviolent protests and civil disobedience campaigns against oppressive laws, such as the Asiatic Registration Act, which required Indians to carry identity documents at all times. Imagine needing a hall pass just to exist outside your home. In 1906, he took a vow of celibacy, or brahmacharya, to focus entirely on his activism. He was 37 and already had 4 children, so perhaps he felt he'd done his part for the population count. He also experimented with communal living, establishing Tolstoy Farm in 1910 near Johannesburg. It was a self-sufficient community where people of all backgrounds lived and worked together. Think of it as an early version of a hippie commune, but with stricter dietary rules. In 1915, at age 45, Gandhi returned to India. He was welcomed as a hero, although some probably wondered who this bald guy in simple attire was and why he was so popular. He was affectionately called Mahatma, meaning great soul, a title given to him by the poet Rabindranath Tagore. It's like earning a verified badge on social media, but way cooler. He spent the next few years traveling across India to understand the conditions of the rural poor. He adopted a simple lifestyle, wearing a loincloth, dhoti, and shawl, and subsisting on a vegetarian diet. He also promoted the use of the spinning wheel, charkha, to encourage self-reliance. The spinning wheel became a symbol of resistance, which is impressive considering most of us can't even figure out how to thread a needle. In 1917, he led the Champaran Satyagraha in Bihar to support indigo farmers oppressed by British planters. The success of this movement demonstrated that his methods could be effective on a larger scale. It's like testing a recipe on a small group and then deciding to open a restaurant. The non-cooperation movement of the early 1920s was his next big step. He urged Indians to boycott British institutions, from schools to courts, and to resign from government employment. He even gave up his own titles and honors awarded by the British. It's like unsubscribing from all your newsletters and deleting your social media accounts to prove a point. However, the movement hit a snag with the violent incident at Chori Chora in 1922, where protesters burned a police station, resulting in the deaths of 22 policemen. Gandhi was deeply disturbed by the violence and called off the movement. He was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison, but was released after 2 due to ill health. Jail time became somewhat of a recurring theme in his life, making him perhaps the only person to use imprisonment as networking opportunities. Fast forward to 1930, and we have the iconic Salt March, also known as the Dandi March. Gandhi and 78 followers walked 240 miles over 24 days to the coastal village of Dandi to make salt, defying the British monopoly. By the time they reached the sea, thousands had joined. It was a masterstroke of civil disobedience that grabbed international headlines. Making salt had never been so rebellious. The British authorities responded by arresting over 60,000 people, including Gandhi. Yet, the movement continued to gain momentum. It's hard to suppress a movement when even basic minerals become symbols of resistance. During World War II, Gandhi's stance was complicated. He was against fascism, but also believed that India couldn't support Britain in a war for democracy when it didn't have its own freedom. In 1942, he launched the Quit India movement, demanding an end to British rule. The British responded by imprisoning him and other leaders for nearly 2 years. At this point, jail was like his second home. Tragedy struck when his wife Kasturba died in 1944 while both were imprisoned. Gandhi was devastated, but continued his fight upon release. The British, drained by the war and facing mounting pressure, finally agreed to grant India independence. However, the joy was short-lived as the subcontinent was partitioned into India and Pakistan in 1947, leading to widespread communal violence. Gandhi walked through riot-torn areas, fasting and appealing for peace. He was 77 years old, and instead of enjoying retirement, he was playing mediator in a conflict that seemed unsolvable. It's like being the designated driver at a party where everyone is already too far gone. On January 30th, 1948, while on his way to a prayer meeting in New Delhi, Gandhi was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu nationalist who opposed his efforts to reconcile Hindus and Muslims. His last words were reportedly, "Hey Ram," expressing his devotion to God. The world mourned. Leaders across the globe paid tribute to a man who had reshaped the tools of resistance. Albert Einstein famously said, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth." High praise from the guy who figured out E = MC². So what's Gandhi's legacy? He inspired civil rights movements worldwide. Martin Luther King Jr. adopted his principles of nonviolent protest during the civil rights movement in the United States. Nelson Mandela looked to Gandhi's methods during his struggle against apartheid in South Africa. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize multiple times, but never won, which makes you question the selection criteria. Of course, Gandhi wasn't without his critics. Some point to his initial views on race during his early years in South Africa, which evolved over time. Others scrutinize his personal life and ascetic practices. But to sum up a life as complex as Gandhi's in a few sentences is like trying to summarize war and peace in a tweet. In the end, Gandhi was a man who embraced simplicity to tackle complexity. He wore homespun cloth to defy industrial imperialism. He fasted to stop violence. He turned the act of walking into a political statement. And he did it all without a marketing team or social media. If you found this deeper dive into Gandhi's life enlightening, or at least more entertaining than scrolling through your ex's Instagram, feel free to like the video and subscribe, or don't. After all, Gandhi believed in freedom of choice, and who am I to argue with that?